Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Happy Sunday, everyone. We will give it a few minutes to see if we have some people to join, and we'll get started with this conversation. Claudia, thank you so much for joining me I always say morning. It is Sunday afternoon on our East Coast, but it is morning on the West Coast. So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Hello, everyone. All right, we're going to wait just a few minutes to see if we have some people join. If not, we are going to get this conversation started
All
anyway.
right. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's been a long time coming. This one was um, a long time in the works, even just the overall conversation. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you being here. All right, we'll give it a few more minutes. It's a busy Sunday for folks, so if we don't have any people join us and right away, we're going to get started anyway.
Okay.
And let the stragglers come on or catch up with this conversation in the replay. All right, I'm gonna kick it off. We'll probably have some people join us. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Jewel Pearson, and this is Miss Bohemian Soul TV. This is the Creating Home a Tiny House series, and this segment is the conversation on intimate spaces. Every Sunday, and let me change. I'm still working on my technology. Here we go. Every Sunday, I offer live content, and I alternate between the conversations and the What's Your Question, where I answer frequently asked tiny house questions. So this Sunday, it is the conversation on intimate spaces with the guests. Good morning. Um, as I introduce myself, I built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015, and since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. I do offer coaching, consultations, and workshops to help others in their tiny house journey, and I serve up a lot of representation in the movement along the way. It is my intent to build figurative and literal community that is inclusive and accessible. And if you find this information and video helpful, I ask that you like it, that you share it, that you subscribe to the channel, and then turn on the notifications so that you'll know when content is available. And again, there's two segments in this series: the conversations on intimate spaces, and then the alternating Sunday, What's Your Question? And so I'm providing new and live content every Sunday. So thank you all for joining us this morning, this afternoon, depending on where you are. And I kind of introduce this segment because I say that I believe our homes tell a story about us, whether it is intentional or unintentional. And then as I think about most of the tiny house people in tiny houses and the van dwellers, RV dwellers, as I think about us, I realize it is usually an intentional story that gets us to this place, and in our intent in our decisions to get here, and then also intent within our design. And that is what I want to explore in this conversation because, as I say, it is so much bigger than just the tiny house. So, welcome, Claudia. Thank you so much again for being here. Excuse me. I am going to ask you to introduce yourself this afternoon, please.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Claudia Morris-Barclay. You can find me on Instagram at rolling_resilience. I am an entertainment, lifestyle, and education consultant. And the short version of that is I help people get it together and level up. I decided to purchase and build out a van in 2019, and I've been living nomadically ever since.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, and we are going to get into your story. So I normally would go into looking at some pictures of the build, and you're in the band life. You're a band dweller, but before I do that, you have kind of an interesting segue into van life, and so I want to talk about that before we actually look at your space. So I knew you. What year was it, Claudia?
We
Um,
met a long time ago. I want to say 2016 or 2017. It
I
was
think it was
somewhere
2016,
there
2017. So
that we
you,
met.
yes, you were part of Tiny House Atlanta. You were a speaker the year as when it the first year when Tiny House Atlanta kicked off and held their festival in Atlanta. I know I'm pretty sure you were there as part of like your job. You were speaking representing you were speaking representing a company. You were
My
correct?
company.
Yeah, okay, your company. Okay, so at
Hmm.
that time, my question then, did you see yourself as or envision yourself at that time living tiny, or were you there at the festival, like helping others who were planning to be in the movement? What was your intent?
My introduction to the tiny house world started in 2014, and it
Okay,
was with the full intent to move into a tiny house.
okay, all
And
right,
so I was on social media and I was already living small. I was living in a 100-year-old house in the center of Atlanta that was broken up into, for all intents and purposes, a series of micro studios. And so I was living in that space. I'm originally from New York City, but I've lived in South Florida. And then at that time, I was living in Atlanta, Georgia. And
okay,
I've gone from small space to living in 2,500 square feet. And then after seeing all the rooms that were not being used, deciding to continue to move smaller and smaller and smaller. My whole family is also from Jamaica. I'm the first one born in this country. And so those spaces aren't large on the island
right,
either. So
right,
I'm accustomed to small spaces, but when you come to America, it's all about the American dream, which in your mind is bigger and better and more
right,
space and
right,
more
right,
things. And then
right.
you get to that point and you were like, okay, but the Jamaican standard of living isn't necessarily this. And wait a minute, let's maybe return to our roots a little bit and being a little more one with nature and a little more
Okay,
intentional in our living choices. So in 2014, I stumbled across a picture on Instagram of a tiny house, but like a converted shed almost that had been moved into a tiny house, so super
mm-hmm,
small. And when I saw that picture, I was like, boom. Didn't think about a freestanding home that could
okay,
be tiny. I always thought about it as apartment dwelling.
okay,
And I was like, hey, wait, I can do this. I want to do this. Who else is doing this? Let's get it together. And so I went, did more of an internet search and found Will Johnston. And I was one of the first 11 people with Tiny House Atlanta. I went to the very
okay,
first meeting and was there until the festival. So as things progressed, I was asked to be a speaker because I have a background in space
got
design
it.
and in
Okay,
organization. So
okay,
that's how
okay.
we got to that festival. I was
Absolutely.
on my way tiny.
Absolutely. Okay. And my connection to you was, hey, I see a brown face.
I was the only one.
Absolutely. As was I. So,
Right?
so
So
you
I was
know,
like, people.
exactly. So you start seeing folks. You be like, hey, hey, hey. Okay. So that explains that. So when you were, so you were kind of living small. It was the mindset, and I always laugh because people from the islands will come and comment on my content, my videos, and they'll say, "This is how we live." You know, they're done with us. This is
Hmm.
how we already live. This isn't anything
What do
new.
you mean? Yeah.
Right, right. So they are put out by these American people who are now returning to Tiny, and it is often hilarious to me. Um, so, what was your timeline? Or were you thinking at that time of a mobile small space, or were you just still thinking of, like you said, a freestanding small stationary space?
I never wanted it to be stationary. I
Okay,
just didn't know that the option was for a traditional looking style house until I saw that Instagram picture. And
okay,
so I knew I wanted it to be a tiny house on wheels, but I wanted it to be very similar to yours. And I hadn't seen yours yet, but I had already drawn up a 3D model of what I was looking for. But I had discovered, through YouTube, etc., that okay, you can build a traditional looking house, but micro and make it mobile. I was like, no, this is for me. And so my plan was to do what you are doing almost exactly now. But with working with Tiny House Atlanta, we realized that getting laws changed and advocacy for that in an urban setting was going to take a while. It was going
absolutely.
to take a while when we were doing it incrementally and having these festivals and doing workshops and doing things like that to try to raise awareness and get the city to say, hey, this is something that we can authorize. And so at that point, when you and I met, I was realizing, okay, this is going to be a few more years in in the
Still,
making.
still a few more
Just
years.
still a few more. And for me, there were so many barriers to home ownership, which you talked about at your workshop. Um, then that I said, okay, well, let's veer. I said, let me buy a condo in Atlanta too, because I really wanted to be in an urban setting, but living in a micro space. And
Hmm.
so I went on the house hunt. But all the barriers that you talked about in your workshop with access to loans, redlining, discrimination, all that stuff hit me. And I spent over a year trying to buy a condo and having trouble at every turn. And I was just going to try a condo just to kind of bide my time while I was waiting for everything else in Atlanta to change. But then late in 2018, back on the internet, I saw a video for someone living van life. And I saw that and I was like, well, that's interesting. I can't do that. Like I want small, but I
Hmm.
needed a
Yeah.
little
Hmm.
bit bigger than that, right? And I was just intrigued by the design aspect of it. And so I saw how they were living, how they were designing, how they were fitting so many things in a space. And as a designer myself, I was like, oh, I can design something like that and make it a mobile office. That was what I thought. So I test drove a van thinking, okay, I'll design a mobile office because I was working on site with clients in entertainment, doing lifestyle design and with education. And so it was just a lot easier to have an office with me
Right,
instead of
right.
having to pack a car every 2 minutes to bring samples and things everywhere. And so I was like, okay, that'll be an idea. But then early 2019, something else happened and it changed the game for me. So I kept trying to pivot to make my way tiny. It wasn't a straight line, but as opportunities arose and as parts of my life changed, I veered with it.
And that's a good point, and I'm glad you brought it out because that is the conversation that I share every Sunday with guests. It is the Dreaming All the Dreams video that I have because you have a goal and it's not always going to be a straight line. You're going to have some pivots, you're going to have some U-turns, it's going to be a whole bunch of stuff, but as long as you have that goal in mind, and are able to roll with the punches as you're off track and realizing that this is the end goal, it can happen. And that's important to know that it's not always going to be just like A to Z. It's going to be a lot in between to get you to that point. So thank you for pointing that out. I think everybody's conversation kind of shares how their journey was not as easy, or from people looking on the outside in always are like, oh my God, how did they do that?
Right.
They're so lucky, or whatever. But it's not that easy in the background when you know the story and how people get to their dreams. Okay, so you touched on it a little bit, and I want to allow you to tell the story. So there was something that happened. You originally were thinking this could be a mobile office. I could do this for mobile office, and now you live this way full time. So share as you want to share how you got to this outside of just seeing it as the mobile office.
So early in 2019, I was working with a client and I was injured in their home, and there was quite a traumatic event surrounding that. And at that moment, I was kind of going through a lot. My mental health was suffering as a result of that. And I realized that that was the universe telling me to stop doing whatever else it was that you were doing and reevaluate. Like I had overarching goals and I had plans, but maybe the way that I was going about it wasn't necessarily the best for me at that time. And so I just took that as a sign from the universe to stop everything and kind of reevaluate what your priorities are and make sure that your daily decisions were leading you directly in that direction rather than kind of maintaining the status quo, which is what it seemed like was happening. And I was getting restless already because all the things that I wanted to do, there were so many outside entities that were preventing me from achieving those incremental goals. And so I started to reevaluate van life and I thought, okay, well, if what you're doing isn't working, do something else. Right.
Hmm.
And so I looked at the van again. I had drawn out a design for an office and I said, well, if I'm planning on doing more with clients around the country anyway, why don't I just move into this van? And I just made a decision to do that. And you know how you make a decision and the universe conspires to assist you is kind of
Yes,
the idea.
yes.
And so I was hoping that that was the case. And but then I started looking for builders. Good luck. Good. Atlanta,
Mhm.
Georgia, finding someone who was going to build out a van for you. It wasn't a popular thing. And
Mhm.
so you weren't going to find a builder. You couldn't find a lot of people who understood what it was you were trying to do. And everyone else was accustomed to like an RV or something like that. And I wanted a
Right.
van.
Right.
And so I reached out to dealerships and just emails and things like that in the Atlanta area, and they didn't pay me any mind. And even the dealer that I had test driven a van wouldn't return my calls, wouldn't respond to my emails. And I was like, okay, what's the problem? You know, what's the problem? And so I kept looking in different places for vans throughout the Atlanta area, wasn't having any dice, but this ad for a silver van kept coming up, but it was in Tennessee. It wasn't in Atlanta. And
Okay.
this ad for this van came up in three, four, five different places, just randomly on social media or on Craigslist, or the same van.
It
And
was
I was like, I'm
following
not
you,
looking.
right?
I wasn't looking for this van. I wanted a white van. I did not want a silver van. I was looking for the most nondescript vehicle possible on purpose.
Mhm.
And so finally, I got a text message from my brother, my little brother, who had just moved to Atlanta from Tennessee. And he sent me a text with the ad for this van. And he was like, I know this isn't exactly what you were looking for, but have you seen this one? And I was like, okay, universe, okay. That's the van
That's
I was
what I've been,
supposed to
that's what
get.
I've been waiting for you to say.
Okay.
When did you recognize the universe was following you around saying, Claudia,
This, you
Claudia?
need this one. Yeah, and I sent an email to the dealer, and they responded almost immediately and was like, when can you get here? We'll hold the van. And I was like, well, I'm injured and I'm trying to figure out some things, and I can hopefully get there in a week. And they're like, we'll hold it. There's a lot of interest on this van, but we'll hold it for you. And I mean, it was as smooth as possible. I mean, everything conspired to make it easier for me to get there. And I was going through it at the time, and I was officially diagnosed with PTSD. And I got the van. I didn't have a builder. I didn't know what was going to necessarily be next. And I made the decision that, okay, I have 10 years of experience with design, right? But I've never built anything in my life. I've put together furniture, but I've never built anything from scratch. And I decided, okay, this is your project. I was planning to go tiny, you know, similar to what you have. And I thought then that I wanted to learn the skills to build that house myself. But I thought I was going to do it a little bit at a time, years from now. And I said, okay, I got the van. I have design skill. So I guess I'm going to learn how to build this van. And I made the decision then to design it, build it, and do it as I was traveling because I was ready to go.
Okay, so before we look at the van and continue this part of the story, I want to step back to a couple of things that you said.
Sure,
So
sure.
there was a quote that you said, and one of the guests captured it. So thank you, Southern Rose, Tia D. Thank you very much. She captured your quote where you said, "Make sure your daily decisions are leading to you to your goals." That to
Hmm.
me aligns with intentional living,
Yes.
and making sure everything that you're doing, thinking, every part of you is in alignment with what it is that you're trying to do overall. And when you clearly you were out of alignment is what you said. You were, and you finally had to stop and start listening.
Hmm.
It just wasn't working out the way you were going, and you finally had to stop and listen. And that happens so many times to people, but oftentimes people will just ignore it and still
Yeah.
trying to keep going down that path of whatever it is that they're doing versus realizing. And I was traveling, I was trying to travel, I guess it's been about a month ago, and things just weren't being smooth. There was so much, and I was like, you know what, Jewel, sit down. This is what this is saying to you. Have a seat. It is whatever, I don't know what was going to happen on that trip, but what I have learned in life is when stuff starts happening like that, where things aren't lining up and you can't find your groove and things aren't settled, you have got to sit down and listen to what is being presented to you and why, and
Hmm.
make those decisions accordingly. So
Yeah.
that's what you had to do. And then
And to
and then once you do it, stuff starts falling into place.
Yes, but just a little caveat with that is that that doesn't mean the path is always smooth and easy.
Oh,
I think
absolutely
some
not.
people think that, okay, well, if there's one hiccup or one challenge, then I should stop then. I don't think that's the case. I think it's
I
when it's
agree.
a series of
When it's
them
a
that the
series,
universe is saying, okay,
absolutely,
you're trying to force this
absolutely
in this direction, and we're trying to show you something else that might
right,
be bigger and better. Stop for a second, get the blinders off, and just look around for just a minute. And then
absolutely,
all of a sudden, the next three steps fall, and then you might
absolutely,
hit a challenge, but you might only hit one, and it's just about you thinking through, okay, how do we navigate that, and then you leap over that small challenge, and then it's smooth again, and then
absolutely.
another challenge. When you're going in the wrong direction, every step,
Yeah,
no matter how small, it's
absolutely.
difficult.
Absolutely.
It's
Like you're fighting
difficult.
a battle. You're fighting trying to go in
The
this
waves.
direction. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Absolutely. And that's good to point out. Did not mean to intimate that it was going to be easy, but there's less of a challenge or less resistance when you're going in the right way. Absolutely.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, I want to now share and I'm going to come back to moving like your plan moved ahead sooner than you anticipated. So I have a couple of questions around that I want to come back, but I want to share um, your build and have you talk through the build with us. So
Sure.
I think you can see the screen. So this is
I
this
can.
is this is the van that was stalking you.
Yes, this was the van that was stalking me, and one of the reasons why I didn't want it was because it was silver. I wanted a used van. I
Okay.
definitely did because vehicles appreciate and value the moment you drive them off the lot. So I don't
Mhm.
see a purpose in buying a brand new vehicle.
Mhm.
However, I did want a vehicle that was new enough that I wouldn't have to worry about breakdowns and things like that. And so
Right.
I'm the second owner to this vehicle, but this vehicle had a couple of dents and scratches and things, and I wanted something a little more clean. But I
Okay.
was like, hey, if you're going to build it yourself, does it matter? No. And so this is what the interior of that van looked like as it was purchased. It also has a partition in the very front. If you can see, we're looking through the back doors, looking towards the front. It has a partition blocking off the cab from the rear, which I did not want. And it also had no windows at all, which originally wasn't my plan, but became a great thing. And
Oh,
so
okay.
this is what the van looked like in the beginning.
Okay. All right. Now, this was the next take. So that's and I
Yeah.
knew that was the progression.
The next thing was I removed that partition almost immediately as soon as I figured out how,
Mhm.
and then added some sound deadening and started adding some firm insulation, and then put it in a floor. And this I learned all of this on YouTube University. Okay, as I needed to learn something, I figured it out. I spent a couple of days and then. Built it and learned how to use those power tools pretty quickly. One thing that was important to note in this cab is that the seats were facing forward. And so I pulled out the passenger seat and added a swivel seat instead so that I would be able to turn that chair and be able to access things in the back without
Absolutely.
much difficulty.
Okay. So your tools now, because I want to come back to what you just
Sure.
said of YouTube University. You were learning as you went along.
Correct.
Were you buying tools? Because I know there are places. So this is for the people who are going to be watching and want to follow these types of footsteps, and they might say, "I don't have all of the tools." Were you buying tools? What? How are you
I
acquiring your tools?
I did buy tools.
Okay.
I purchased a carpentry set, battery operated tools, because I knew that I was going to be traveling and building. I wasn't going to be able to build in place. Where I was living, there was no parking area. There's only off street parking. So I did this whole build on street corners, in home improvement parking lots, and in public parks. I never had a dedicated space to build, and I had to move almost every day. So I needed to have tools on my person, and so renting them when I needed something specialty, I could
Mm.
go to a home improvement store and rent it,
Yep.
or borrow it if I knew someone. But the main tools like saws, drills, hammers, I purchased and made
Okay.
sure they were battery operated.
All right. So, two things I think, excuse me, that are key. There are places for people who are don't won't have access to the tools. There are local
Yeah.
places that offer rentals. The big box
Yes.
stores offer rentals, and then there are also small shops that offer rentals. So look into that information
Absolutely.
for building. And then the other thing where you were saying you built. anywhere you could. And I think
Correct.
from that, it's where there's a will, there's a way. So like it's not always going to line up that you have a dedicated bill spot, but if you are trying to be creative and make things happen, then you kind of go with the flow. And I think
Correct.
that's something that you've just showed how important that is.
So before I moved into the van itself, I just built very basic things. So these are base cabinets for a kitchen, and then I ended up building a bed, and then I moved in. That was it. So they weren't finished. There was always material in the van with me, still is. And you just grab whatever wood you need for that project that you think you're working on next, and just purchase just enough to complete it or what you think you need. And then you build a little bit and then move on.
And then
And
move
so that's
on.
what you're looking at here, the base of the kitchen.
Okay.
This is one of my favorite parts of the space. So my background as a space designer focuses mostly on storage spaces,
Okay.
closets, home offices, garages, anywhere you need to store something and have it function in a high way. That's what I design. And so this is an example of a closet. So I built a full size closet in my van. That was a priority for me. I took what was in my house already, a 5 foot wide closet, and fit it in a much smaller space. So these are pieces pulled from my apartment closet. And the
Okay.
bottom here is a drawer frame for the 8 drawers that I have in the closet. And the top is 4 of the 5 feet of hanging space that I have in that space.
I'm gonna have to have you come work on my closet when you're in my area. A mental
And this
note.
was the next step of the kitchen. So you all saw the empty wood framing before, and this was the
Mm-hmm.
next layer. I had to build around appliances, so I acquired the appliances. So you'll see in the far left, that is a refrigerator, the center are cabinets, and then the right is a stove, and then there's a sink. And so I had to build all of the framework around them. So I got the appliances, fit them in, and then built the rest of the cabinetry around it. So this is kind of the underside, the underlayer of that. And then as you can see, there's now a curtain that's partitioning the cab from the rear. And then the wooden that you see above the countertop space is actually the interior door, sliding door of the van. So this is all on the passenger side of the
Okay.
van.
Okay. And this is still you learning from YouTube University.
Still me learning. Every day I say, okay, how do we use a nail gun? Got it. Let's put these 2 strips of wood up. How do I cut a sink? Got it. Let me get the table saw out, or excuse me, the circular saw out and cut out a sink.
Alrighty.
And each day I had to learn, I had to watch a video first that says how to use a circular saw and not lose a finger.
Yeah, exactly. No, no,
How to use a nail
that
gun
part
and
is
not lose an
important.
eye.
Absolutely. Okay, so do it yourselfers. Let take note. All right. And so then the next few pictures I just thought were beautiful of locations. So talk to us about this location.
So I bought a nondescript van
Mm-hmm.
because you can take it anywhere. And I go from urban to natural to off-roading to your residential area. And so this is in Portland, Oregon. And this is an example of what we call stealth camping. So
Mm-hmm.
because my vehicle is nondescript, no one knows that it's an RV and that I live in there. And so I park in obvious places like this and get away with it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is in a national forest in California. It was just me, the road, and no one for miles and
Okay.
days, actually. So here I was enjoying the view. One thing to note, you can probably see just a little bit on the top of the van, solar panels. My
Okay.
entire van runs on solar. I had to learn how to wire that too. That was fun. And that allows me to be in extremely remote places for up to 2 to 3 weeks at a time without needing any thing. I have all the water, all the solar, all the food that I need, and I don't have to see another person for 2 to 3 weeks to get anything. And so you'll see me here in the middle of the national forest, among other places, camping alone for the very first time.
That's beautiful. So this was your first time.
Every picture you'll see, it's all of it is my first time.
Okay. Okay.
This is in Washington. This is actually no, excuse me. This is in Canada, Vancouver, Canada, overlooking uh, a beautiful body of water. And I was just looking for some fresh air and some salt water and beautiful
And
sky. and just enjoying myself. This is one of the rare times where I had an actual parking lot to be in. I don't camp at campgrounds, so
Okay.
everywhere you see is always some sort of public place. It's never a private location unless I'm literally in the woods.
Okay. I love
San
that
Francisco.
shot.
Yeah. I wanted to see the Golden Gate Bridge. I grew up, watching shows like Full House, for example, and had to, and wanted to drive across that bridge. And so I did. And
And
I
so
loved
you
it. And this
did.
is actually a rest area that they do allow overnight parking at. And I was overlooking, I'm trying to think of the other part of San Fran.
San Fran. Yeah. I know where I know exactly what's over there, but I don't know the
I'm
name
thinking
of it.
Sausalito. That's what.
Okay.
This is in Texas, in a lone cactus laden area in Texas, just enjoying the sunset and taking a break because you spend a lot of time driving. So if you don't love driving, van life may not be for you, but I do love it. And if you actually look on the top of the van again, what looks like a shark's tail is actually a ventilation fan
Okay.
sticking
I think that might be the oh no.
out. This is on the top of the rock in Utah, and this is actually a hidden spot where local people come and paraglide. And so I parked there for a while, and every morning got to watch people jump off the edge of that rock and fly through the air.
That is so cool. Oh, I think I see somebody over there. Is
Yeah,
over here?
that little dot.
Yep.
Yes,
Okay, I think that was the end of the pictures that I captured. So, um, let me get us back here on this. All right, so thank you. Thank you.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. So, so my question before we continue talking about the van, how has this time since the incident, how has that helped you heal?
That the reason why I tackled a project this big is because it was all consuming. You can't focus on the way that you feel as far as feeling bad or the emotions that you're working through the same way. You can't dwell on that when your hands are busy. And that's always been a practice of mine. Just when I'm going through something, I can work through it in my mind when I work on things with my hands, or when I'm creating something new. It allows you to stay in a place of forward momentum
Mhm.
rather than dwelling in the past. But it's not ignoring, it's not full distraction. It's just
Mhm.
okay, while your brain is processing this in the background, you are looking forward and you have a goal that you're working towards. And so I tackled that project so that I could fill my brain with new memories instead of all of the old ones that weren't necessarily serving me. And so, one piece at a time, I built a van, and at the same time, I rebuilt my mind and I helped realign my physical body and my mental space towards the goals and the life that I intended to live, not just the life I got caught up in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now how long have you been in the van? And you're full time, correct?
Full
Full
time
time.
in the van. Um, I have been to 30 states thus far,
Okay.
and it's been over 3 years. April was the beginning of my fourth year of full time nomadic living,
All
and
right.
that was a surprise. Let me tell you, that
What
wasn't
was
the plan.
Oh, right. 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 Okay, so I have to ask this because I get asked the question all the time. What are you scared? How do you protect yourself? How did you push through those fears? Like you said, sometimes you're the only person out there. I'm ask I'm not asking that for me. I'm asking that because somebody else is gonna ask it. I hate that question, but go ahead.
Yeah, I get it. I get it
But I
though.
understand it absolutely. That's why I'm asking it.
I'm not going to give you too many details about how I protect myself because if I tell you, then it no longer keeps me safe.
Mhm.
So that's another thing. That's number one. Don't tell everybody all your business all the time. That's
Like
one way that you
I like
protect
that.
yourself. By the way,
Mhm.
the more people know, the more people can track you, and the less safe that you are. But as far as being scared, yes, it's scary. Every day is scary. Okay. And it's just a decision that you have to make. Now, the decision has to be, do I trust myself enough to take the next step? Do I trust myself enough to believe that even if I don't know the answer today, that I can figure it out? And what van life teaches you, and what living on the road in particular teaches you, is to follow your instinct
Mm-hmm.
without hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
Because every decision you make has to be based on that gut instinct. It's not going to be logical. If your brain and your body tells you you don't need to be here right now, but you can't
You need
figure out the reason, like you don't see a threat, you don't whatever, you just feel a little bit funny, move,
listen.
move.
Absolutely.
Move until you feel settled. And
Absolutely.
the joy of living on the road is that you can do that. And it's in my mind, being on the move is safer than being stationary, because some of the things that people are afraid of, especially women, is being followed or having someone break into your space or things like that. But good luck catching a moving target. And people follow you because you have regular patterns.
Mm-hmm.
They know you go to work at this time. They know you come home at this time. They know that you do those things.
Right.
Um, they can't
Right.
track you if they can't find you.
Right. Right.
So that's a big thing. And in pushing through the fear is focusing on the things that you can control and making a plan. The plan, you may not always be able to follow the plan to a T, but it's a lot easier to say, okay, in this situation, I might do this. In this situation, I might do that. And give yourself a couple of options that you've already thought about to combat those fears, and then take the next step.
Excellent. 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 So your IG name, Rolling Resilience,
Uh-huh.
um, and your home now, your lifestyle, the things that you're doing as you move about the world, nomadically. What what do you want people to take from this journey, from what you're doing, from your IG name? What should people understand about that, about you and this journey?
Um, that the idea of resilience is something that sometimes people put on, let's say black women, for example, but it's not something that we embody intentionally. It's that things have happened to us and we have moved through it because we have not been given the opportunity to sit back and choose
Mhm.
um, a way or a path. For me, van life and hitting the road and making the decisions every day, it was an act of self-care. That was the purpose. That was the point. And because self care is something that changes based on what your needs are in that moment, it's something that's always on the move and always changing. And so for me, the van, building it and naming it, her name is Ro, technically,
Okay.
REAU, but it's a play on a shortened version of rolling resilience. But it's a physical manifestation of moving, changing, growing, and being resilient because you've chosen to, because you've taken the time to sit back and evaluate yourself, and you're making a space that is for you, by you, and moving you in the direction that you want to go. And with van life in particular, or living on the road in particular, you get to make your decisions every day based on what serves you and only you. There's no one else and nothing else that is more of a priority than your mental health and your physical safety.
Mhm. Mhm. How were you impacted during the start of the pandemic, quarantine? How did that impact your travels and your thought process around how you were living and moving?
I was extremely grateful for the choice that I've made. And as I've continued to move, like the pandemic has changed certain things. A lot of people in van life use a lot of public services. Um, they use a lot of public restroom areas, public workspaces, public areas to gather, public areas to park, and especially the beginning of the pandemic shut everything down to the point where it shut down national parks. So even
Mhm.
if you're thinking, oh, I can go out to the woods, well, parts of the woods are closed. And you're
Mhm.
like, "Well, you didn't realize that was a possibility until
Right.
it happened."
Right.
And
Everything
so
changed.
I started van life in 2019, a year before the pandemic. And so thankfully, I already, had my feet under me, had an idea of
Mhm.
what I wanted to do and the things that I wanted to try already. But when the pandemic hit, all of this, let's go out in the woods and figure out what life is like camping, I had to do right then. So I immediately left all urban spaces, went out into the forest, and spent several months in woods, off the coasts of beaches, on top of mountains. And so I jumped into some of my more ambitious adventures a lot faster because they put me all in spaces where there were no people for weeks at a time. And so it was a moment of, okay, extreme fear with not knowing what was happening with the pandemic, but the danger was people. So I packed up and
Yeah. And
moved
got
out
away
where there
from the
were no
people.
people.
Right.
And because I built my van with the intent of it being full time living, I was fully self contained and I could do everything that I needed to do, with the exception of internet, um, in my space. And I was just seeing it as the universe setting me up for being a self sufficient, autonomous person, no matter what, if the world was falling down around me.
Grateful is definitely a word that I use in thinking about my house with um, quarantine in the pandemic, and I have shared that I was having to go into conventional housing. I was getting an apartment. I had signed the lease on an apartment the week before the quarantine happened. And
Yeah.
I was having to do that, and I share this, and I'm sharing it again because yesterday someone commented. I deleted their comment, but someone commented on one of my videos to say something about how your mindset attracts racism, something dumb along those lines. Uh,
It's like,
so
hold on.
yes,
I'm
those
yes
those
and
are
no.
those are the comments that are just like clearly you don't know how racism works. It's nothing that it's nothing within your realm of understanding. So I'm not even. It's just like delete. Like Jewel a few years ago might have spent some
Had
time
time.
going off, and Jewel now is like delete. Like I am denying you access to my entire existence because that was dumb and I'm not addressing it. Right. Reclaiming my time, reclaiming my time.
Yes,
Thank you, Auntie
ma'am.
Maxine.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, but I was having to, because my home was on a farm where there was acts of racism happening where someone was eventually arrested. um I was not in a safe space and I needed to regroup and find a place to place my home. And so I had signed a lease the week before shutdown happened. And what I there was a lot of, yes, access denied. There was a lot of gratitude in different ways. I was grateful to not be stuck in a space where I wasn't going to feel safe until, not knowing what was going to happen. I didn't want to be in an unsafe space. um but then there was also later on trying to get back to my house, and it made me more grateful for my home and more aligned with, because at that point, when it first happened, I was like, okay, this is, I think that was year 5, and this is the third time I've moved my house out of my own volition. And this is racism. This is the second time I've dealt with racism and had to move. It's like, okay, do I need to rethink what I'm doing? Like, is it time to give up tiny house living? Is even was kind of in the back of my head at that point, because racism is tiring, and I know I ain't got to tell you, but
Yes.
exhausting. And so as the pandemic hit and I'm in this apartment and I need to rely, like you were saying, in these spaces, I need to rely on everybody in this entire building that I don't know to do the right thing, wear a mask, wash their hands, and nobody was doing anything like they were supposed to be doing. And so now, it's the group project where you can't count on the rest of the
Ooh,
people on the team to do what they're supposed to do. So it's like
story of my life.
I gotta go back to my own project. And so it re-energized me to say, no, I just need to get back in my house. And the gratitude came up again. I've got to get back into my house because this is um somebody just got kicked out for this broadcast. I love those little buttons that let you move people around. Just I don't have time for it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a gratitude for my home and the small space and what it afforded me for safety. and
Mm-hmm.
and that was a shift, and my appreciation changed from my house. And now I know there are some things that I am doing differently, kind of based on things I need to have access to, just in case we go back into that time again. Like that mindset, you it changed your mindset. But gratitude, gratefulness is absolutely the word that I think of in thinking of my tiny house, just relative to what you just said, to have access to that space. So I don't have to be around all of y'all who don't want to do what's right for the group project.
Absolutely right. One thing to keep in mind, though, for the pandemic, for other road travelers, is that it was a big deal for all of us because the same way you said, okay, you happened to sign an apartment lease right when everything shut down, all of us on the road had nowhere to go.
Right,
We
right,
couldn't stay still if we wanted to.
right.
And so it was with the grace of, if we were in city or urban spaces, of having law enforcement say, okay, well, we can't penalize you for doing all these things that might be against the law, living in a vehicle or staying in one place past the parking signs or things like that. Because I ended up speaking to a police officer. I said, where would you like for me to go? He's like, well, why don't you go to this campground? And I was like, campgrounds are closed. Why don't you go to the national park? Park are closed. Everything is closed, and the sign above my head says that I can only be here for 72 hours. But you don't have an answer for me as to where I should be, just out of your way. We can't do that, and no one else that's living in a vehicle can do that. So what would you like for us to do? And so we had to figure things out very, very quickly. And so even when you were also talking about, racism making you feel unsafe in other spaces, that was part of my housing journey of trying to buy a condo and things like that. It was all the people in the group project outside of my control
Mhm,
that had an issue with the black woman who wanted to buy a property in this particular neighborhood at this particular price point. And it was trying to fight all of those external things. It wasn't my mindset that stopped people from giving me something because they had an issue with my blackness. Just,
mhm,
which I
mhm,
know I'm preaching to the choir, but
mhm,
even on the road, my blackness is a big deal, especially in certain parts of the country, and especially during a pandemic where everyone's kind of afraid of everything already. Um, Me being who I am sometimes put me in danger. And
mhm,
so having the van is huge because I think of it kind of like, when you talked about coming back to your home and feeling safe at home, the van is like, you're like a turtle with your shell on your back. Your
mhm,
home is always with you, but
mhm.
every time you look out the window, your view changes. So you get to have several homes, but always sleep in your own bed. And that's like my favorite part of it
Yeah,
and why it was so appealing to me as well.
yeah. The other conversation of access to conventional housing and the reasons those things don't happen, and the redlining and the inequity and the all of those things that I
They can
talk
come to your
about
workshop to see.
so so often, and why tiny houses make sense, and why we need access in our community, why it's so important to our community. Those are the things that keep rising up. Those are the conversations that keep needing to be had,
Hmm.
because there's so much change that's needed, and that's necessary. And then there's the other conversation of safety in these movements, as a RV dweller, as a van dweller, as a tiny house person, safety as a black person in this movement outside of the regular concerns. Where can I put a tiny house is the number one concern for everyone in the movement. Where can I put a
Hmm.
tiny house, and where can I be safe because I'm a black woman in a tiny house? So now I've got two concerns where my
Hmm.
counterparts have the one, and the same for you. Like moving about, there is an added element of caution as a black woman moving through van life, and it's not all the beautiful sprinter pictures that some of your counterparts get to display. There's another element of safety and concern.
Sure, and a level of privilege.
Oh,
And a level
oh,
of privilege that
no,
people forget
Oh,
because I'm very lucky to be in the vehicle that I'm in. But
absolutely.
first, other people
And
look
it was
at
a
you like you live in a
choice.
vehicle. It was and it wasn't. I mean, it was. There were other things that were moving around me that made it that I needed to change my situation sooner, rather than later. Beyond the trauma, there were several other factors,
Okay.
and so I was lucky to be able to choose this van and a vehicle in particular. That was a choice for me,
Mm-hmm.
but my other options weren't necessarily working out
Got
either.
you. Got
Um,
you. Okay.
so so that kind of propelled me to say, okay, I can keep trying to fight against these other things, or I can make a decision to do something that I only know a little bit about. And then there are other vehicle dwellers, some are on Instagram, some are not, that don't have the privilege of being in a vehicle as nice as mine. And
Mm-hmm.
so I decided to take, what funds I had and put it towards the nicest vehicle that I could, and figure out what was going to happen inside, while other people grab a vehicle that is just there, that just happens to be there, and they're
Mm-hmm.
living just as valid a life, but doesn't seem as beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the people who I've encountered on the road, the vast majority of them are not in the fancy sprinters that you see
Mm-hmm.
on social media. They're not.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who are living more modestly, let me tell you, they're amazing. They're amazing. The things that you can learn from these people, and the people, the way that you're embraced as part of the road dweller community, regardless of what wheels you roll on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a fantastic thing to be a part of, and it's a subset of the tiny house community. But the road overlanders are a whole different community as well, and it's fantastic. And in that setting, within the community, my blackness isn't an issue.
Excellent. Excellent. That's beautiful. Um, you touched on the privilege, and I've spoken about that too because there is, I have a privilege in my house because I there was a choice to for me to live tiny. I had financial access to be able to build my home, and so in there have been conversations, and I've talked about this too, whether where people want to talk about whether tiny house living is appropriation, poverty appropriation. And so those are the conversations that are necessary to have, and it's also why it is important to stay aware of that privilege, and where I've said, and I had an opportunity for apartment therapy to kind of talk about this. It's like, do I not do this because I have privilege, or do I do this because I have privilege and use my voice and my opportunity to bring awareness for those who don't have the voice and who don't have privilege, to also try to help them come along as well. I think the problem comes when you don't use that privilege to help others at a disadvantage. And so that is an excellent conversation, and always a necessary conversation. Um, so, in addition to the healing, um, the resilience by choice, what else have you learned about yourself in this journey that maybe you didn't know before?
Um, a lot of this journey confirmed things about me, but I think what surprised me is I was always looking for stability because there were so many things around me that were unstable. And my intention in jumping in the van originally too was to see what else this country had to offer, because I was already 1 foot out of this country, to be quite honest. I was like, okay, I think I know what America is about, and I'm ready to be somewhere else. And I traveled internationally a few times as well, but I was like, you know what, let's give America a chance. Let's see what else is happening here, and let's see if there's somewhere else that feels like home beyond the East Coast. And I want to learn about what else this country has to offer. So I didn't have a specific timeline on how long I would be in the van, but before building my van, I'd never set foot in one. So I didn't know how long I could be in a space that small. It's 84 square feet. And before that, I had been living in a space that was just under 300 square feet. And I knew then that I needed at least 100 more square feet to fit an office for office for workspaces. Like as far as my general living, it was okay, but I needed about 400 square feet to fit my entire life comfortably in that space. And so for me to go down to 84 square feet, and I am mildly claustrophobic, seems like a strange thing to say, but I was like, I don't know. I don't know about this. So it might be 3 months from now, and I'd be begging someone to take this van off my hands, but let's see how long it could go. I'm surprised. I'm shocked that 4 years, about to be 4 years later, I'm in the van still. Shocked. What
Mm-hmm.
I'm also shocked by is although I found other parts of the country that I enjoy leaving as much as I enjoy arriving. That was unexpected because the
Mm-hmm.
stability of my personal space remains the same. And so that stability within myself, that feeling of home
Mm-hmm.
is with me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so my physical location is not as relevant. And so the idea that I love to leave as much as I love to get there was surprising to me. And I think that's what I've learned as much that as long as I have my little shell, everything is good in the world.
Beautiful. So there are a couple of things that I want to. I added a comment from Indigo Moon, who said she'd like to hear about choosing this lifestyle with disability, aka low income. I don't know that this is the conversation for that. I don't know that I have any expertise there, and Claudia, I don't know if that you have any expertise. But what I can say from an encouraging standpoint is that it is possible. That I would suggest getting involved in joining and following the communities because there are a very styles, incomes, all kinds of things of people who are in these communities who gladly share their information of how they got there, what it took, and are happy to help you in this journey. So I think the best thing to do is to get involved in following the community and finding people who are sharing some of the same challenges to be informed and to find some guidance there.
Absolutely. You can also go to my website, rollingresilience.com, and to follow me on Instagram, and you can schedule a consultation with me, and I can break some of that down for you. And I'm also in the process of creating some resources specifically for Black women who want to get on the road as well. So if you join my email list, you'll be the first to know about any resources that I create. But on the internet, the road dweller community, regardless of what kind of vehicle that you're in, is very welcoming and very forthright with their information. And there is a way to do this regardless of your ability level, regardless of your income level. And if you can't do it by yourself, there's a group of people who will help. And your space just needs to feel like home, and it can be beautiful, and it can be beautiful without being expensive. There are a lot of things that look really cute that don't cost so much,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's more about meeting your basic needs first and then making it feel cozy second.
Excellent. And so all of Claudia's information is going to be in the description of the video. So you'll know how to access her for additional information. So thank you very much for that. Another thing I wanted to mention as we were talking about the work that you did, someone commented about
Makerspace.
the maker
Yeah,
spaces. Absolutely. Major cities have maker spaces where you can use tools and they help you create components. So look,
I
go
I
ahead.
do want to speak on that though, because I have researched those maker spaces, and that can work if you have things that you're building that are not attached to the vehicle. When you
Okay.
have to do the van itself, the maker spaces are a challenge because you can't bring your van into that space, and they're often in industrial areas that don't necessarily have parking. So if you're building, it's different than building a traditional home in that you might say, okay, well, I need a cabinet, so you build a cabinet outside and you
Mhm.
put it in. That's not the case when you're building in a vehicle
Mhm.
because of the curves and the contours of the space itself. You have to build a lot of things and have it attached and build it custom in the vehicle
In the
at
vehicle.
that time.
Mhm.
So some of it you can build outside and pull in a maker space, but a lot of it you're going to have to be in the vehicle. So wherever you're building needs to be somewhere that you can work directly in it.
Absolutely. Okay. And then there was also a comment about the how sad it was about America that we have to be aware of number one as a lone woman and then double aware as a Black woman. And it is a very sad commentary. And it's kind of like why when I was saying I don't entertain, conversations that I attract racism. It's 2022, and if you don't understand at this point that this is America and how it's working, then I don't have the time to educate you. But it is very sad, and I often feel like we don't see improvement, which is
Well,
why.
well, I would say, systemically, for sure, the lack of improvement is a challenge. But in my time on the road, there are some really surprising people who will be incredibly kind to you. And people who, at a glance, based on your own bias,
Hmm.
you'll say,
Hmm.
"Ooh, that person's scary." And that person sees you as an opportunity to talk to someone who's not like them and embrace it and learn something. So, of course, there's those moments where you don't necessarily want to be the educator, but that person, they've never been exposed to someone like you, and they don't have a hatred for you. They have a curiosity, and they want to help you in any way possible in exchange for getting to spend time with you, with someone different and something different, and they're excited about it. So as sad as it can be, and as frustrating and exhausting as it can be to be a Black person in America, there are a lot of people out there in extremely conservative and
Hmm.
white spaces that will
Hmm.
be really, really kind to you.
I agree
So
with that.
keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that you
I
might be.
agree with that, and I think that kind of connects with what I was gonna say next was that is why conversations like this are necessary, because there are so many people, outside of the people who will come and tell me I attract racism. There are so many people who don't understand how it works. And if we're not
Yeah.
speaking about our experiences and talking about the concerns, they have no way of knowing. Like, and I say that about coming into the tiny house movement. If I hadn't started talking about the racism I encountered trying to go to the events that were in rural areas, or the concerns that I had in rural areas, that wasn't their experience, and that was why it was important for me to use my voice to speak about it so that people coming along would understand those challenges, and people who didn't have the awareness would be like, okay, so if I am on the road, if I am part of this community, if I am in an RV park, I can be more aware for a person of color, for a Black person,
Hmm.
so that I can be an ally and be that person. So absolutely, I agree
And
with
just to
that.
give you an example of that, I spent a couple of months working on a organic farm in a rural small town in Southern Oregon. And I went there because the family and the group of people who ran that farm, they were very vocal about their allyship and about that we're in a space where this area is extremely conservative, and the history of this area is not necessarily friendly to BIPOCs, but we love international people and people of color, and we don't have access to really get to know
Mhm.
them in this environment. And because we're educating ourselves and we're trying to learn more, we really, really, really want you here. And because we've learned more about, at least on the internet, about what your experiences are like, these are the safeguards we've put in place for you. Please let us
Excellent.
know if there are others that you need, but we would love
Excellent.
to have you here so we can learn from each other, because the point of this is for it to be a cultural exchange. So if you're willing to come, we'll teach you everything we know about homesteading and farming. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about what your life is like.
That's
And it was
beautiful.
an amazing experience. And I'm very grateful to them.
I I appreciate that. I love that because I've also said that we can't end racism. We can't end
No, we didn't start it.
white supremacy. We didn't start it. It is up
Yeah.
to them to end it. And so the people being interested in and wanting to learn, and though that's how change happens. It's not change. We can talk all day long about our experience, but it's not going to change anything because we're not inflicting the racism. So I'm glad that you had that experience. That is an excellent experience. And thank you for sharing that. Um, what is one thing that you wish people understood about van dwelling or the lifestyle or van dwellers? What is one thing that maybe is misunderstood that you wish more people understood?
That it's not shameful to live in a vehicle, that you're not automatically, quote, poor
Mhm.
because you're not in a fancy sprinter.
Mhm.
That for some people it's a vacation home, and for some people it's their whole life, whether they're in a Prius or they're in an SUV or they're in a sprinter or they're in an RV or a trailer. The wheels don't matter.
Mhm.
It is the choice that people in the road community, some of them are doing it by choice, many of them are not,
Mhm.
but all of us collectively are chasing freedom. We want the option to be where we are wanted and where we feel good, and to have the stigma and shame removed around someone falling into this lifestyle or choosing the lifestyle.
Mhm.
It might look different on the surface how we're going about it, but in the communities online, our conversations are the same. Where do we find water? Where do we stay?
Mhm.
What's the weather like where you are? Is there good parking here? Uh, how has anybody figured out how to wash their dishes with as little water as possible? Like, the conversations about how to live and how to thrive are the same, regardless of how much money we're spending. And so just remove the stigma of that. And also understand that living on the road is for everyone. I'm going to make that blanket statement that you may not do it full time. I'm not saying that's for everyone. I'm not saying
Mhm.
throw
Mhm.
everything away
Absolutely.
and jump in a car and go. But if you get the opportunity, or you make the opportunity to hit the road for, let's say, 2 weeks to a month, and you do it in a way where it's everything you're doing is in your vehicle, you will be amazed at what you learn about yourself, what you accomplish, and how much of this or any country that you'll see that it's a very different world when you live like a local everywhere you go.
Mhm.
And so it's a worthwhile thing to do. Take a summer road trip, but not hotel to hotel.
Right. Right.
Do it all yourself and see what it's like to be fully autonomous. And I think that's something that it's a misconception that you're dependent on everything and everyone when you live in a vehicle, and that you've thrown your life away
Yeah.
because you live this way. There are many different ways to live. Embrace them.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me, and I always share the story of how in 2013, 2014, as I had stumbled on tiny houses and was telling people that I was going to build a tiny house, and people, are you having hardship? Do you need
Yeah,
somewhere to live?
but it's
And
okay if you are.
it's like, it's not, it is okay if I am, but and then at that time the stigma around what it they thought it looked like was so huge that nobody could really understand what I was doing. It was like, no, that's not the direction that I'm going in. I am, and just what you just said, my whole thing about it was I want to live in no freedom, liberation. And that's
Hmm.
this and Dinkerson symbol right here is liberation. I'm chasing the same thing. Like I don't um the subscribing to the American dream of bigger, better. It should look like this, to work hard to do this and have this. That is not the direction. That is not liberation for me. That's heavy. That feels heavy.
It's heavy. Well, to wait until retirement to do what? So that you can't physically do all the activities out hiking and whatever that you would be able to do if you were younger. What exactly are you retiring from and moving towards? Why can't you do it both at the same time? And one other misconception. This is a small one for van lifers, because you mentioned it when you said, "Oh, do you need somewhere to stay? Is it a hard life?" That's the constantly people are asking me, "Do you need somewhere to stay?" I live in my van. It's my home. And so when I come to visit, this is the best part about having a van or a vehicle do, is that when you go to visit friends, you don't need a guest room. It's a built-in guest room. And a lot of people, their feelings are hurt if they're like, "Oh, I have a guest room set up for you." And I say, "Well, no, that's thank you, but I'd like to stay in my van." They're like, "You don't have to be outside in the elements." And I was like, "I'm in a queen size bed with
I'm
a
not
full kitchen and
outside
shower.
in the
I
elements.
I love it." And they're like, "Well, is my guest room not good enough for you?"
Oh my
Think about it like
goodness.
this. How much do you love sleeping in your own bed?
Right,
Just period.
right, right.
So I promise you, I'm so happy to be visiting you, and I love sleeping in my van, but I might borrow your shower because I'm low on water. So everyone who's living in their vehicle, regardless, is really happy to sleep in their own bed. And so we appreciate, snacks and a shower and maybe laundry, but it's not pride that's stopping us from sleeping on your couch.
Right, right, right. I love that. So what's next, or do you know what's next? Do you have an idea of how much longer you plan to do van life, or are you just still just kind of rolling with it? And when you know you want to do something different, you know you'll want to do something different.
I'm following the path that the universe puts in front of me. My goal of having a tiny house on wheels, more traditional looking like yours, has not changed. It's just a matter of figuring out where and when makes the most sense. And then I will keep my van and do it for trips or rent it out. I have a long term plan for the van itself. And I'd like to live in a few different places and split my time throughout the year in a
Hmm.
few different places. And I have those kind of set in mind.
And we
And
talked
so
about Panama. Both both of us have
yeah, Panama. We like
Yes,
Panama. I
yes.
like Panama. I also like France. I also
Okay.
like South Africa. I
Okay, yes.
also like Canada. I also
Yes.
like Asia. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. So the plan is to expand and have multiple dwellings on wheels, um, and to continue to move with the weather. And I'm gonna trust that the universe is gonna put the next thing in front of me as I need it to, and that I will move towards that. I don't have a timeline for the van. It's when I see the next thing that makes the most sense, I'll move to that. So if that happens tomorrow, okay. If that happens 2 years from now, we'll see. I'm still building the van, as I go. It looks more finished than it is. so so I might get to the point where I rip it out and build another thing again, but I'm just taking it a day, a week, a month at a time. Have we even shown the people my finished van?
Did I miss?
I
Uh-oh.
don't think we did.
I think I might have missed some pictures. I think I'm gonna have to add a link because let me see if I can pull them up. That must have been the other folder, and I don't know that I downloaded. Let me see while you're talking if I can figure out how to do that. Um, this will be a test of my technology skills on the fly
I
here.
believe in you, Jewel. I believe in you.
Oh, let me see here. Okay. What is while I'm trying to it's what folder is it? It's the van
That says
the
interior.
say it again.
There's one that says interior.
No,
It looks like you pulled the
no,
one from.
you only gave me four. Okay, so it wasn't me. Give me access to four folders and I don't have
Okay.
interior. I have a
In
headshots
the one
folder
that says,
and the
and the
I
one
have
that where you pulled the build photos, it's a two-section folder.
oh, there it is.
It's
I
the
see
one
it.
that says the same row. It says build folder, and then it says finished
I
interior.
see it. Okay, let's see what I can do real fast. Um, all right.
It's all right. I was like, I know I sent you lots of things.
Sorry about that. I totally missed that.
Oh, that's okay.
What, while I'm pulling this up and it just might work,
Mhm.
tell us it's working. What would be the title of your autobiography?
I think I would keep it along with my Instagram, Rolling Resilience, for sure.
I love that. All right, let me see if I can move this to this other screen. That
All
might,
right, multi-screen.
I know, that might be the only thing that doesn't have, oh, I know what I need to do over here. Hold on.
No worries.
Look at you getting me, show my technology skills right
I'm
now.
very impressed
I am
personally.
so sorry I missed this folder.
Oh, that's all
Um,
right.
but I have been outside in the heat, and I'm gonna use that as part of my excuse. I've been outside painting, which is what's all on my hand.
It's
If
the fumes from the paint.
anybody is trying to figure out why my hands look dirty today, it it's
See, you're
paint.
you're a DIYer too.
I
You
am a
figure out something, you go out
DIYer.
and get it done. So because I have that background in space design, I designed something really complicated, not beginner friendly in the slightest. But I was like, okay, well, you better figure it out. You better figure it out.
I
There you
think
go.
I have it. So let's see.
So
Do you
this is the
Okay.
new interior. Yes, I can't see it. This is the new interior of the van. This is if we're sitting in the passenger seat with the swivel seat turned around and looking
Mhm.
towards the back doors. The left is the passenger side. The right is the driver's side. The passenger side has a full kitchen, top level storage, middle countertop space, appliances on the bottom, and the right hand side was the closet you all saw earlier. But in the there are two pictures that are on the right hand side closest to the camera. That's actually a full bathroom. And then all the way in the back, you'll see a lounge area with a desk. It's got a little secret thing in the desk there, bench seating, and then some storage on the side. So that's the interior there. And if you want to send the next one, this is the angle if you're standing at the driver's door looking at the closet. And art was a huge thing for me
Mhm.
because I like to be surrounded by things that are inspirational. And so there are pictures of where I've been, where I'm going, and creations and things that my friends have made and photos that I've taken. It's kind of just like a vision board that's surrounding me at all
Mhm.
times.
Mhm.
It's loading. This is the back area. Um, You'll see storage on the top, two brick walls on the side, and bench seating on the bottom. The bench on the right hand side houses a 33-gallon water tank, a water heater, and a water pump. And on the left hand side is my full solar system, inverter, and all the wiring that goes through that. And then those two walls that look like brick walls, they aren't walls, they're actually my bed. And I cut my bed in half and built it on either side to fold down so that I could have storage above it.
I thought
This is
okay.
another
I'm
angle,
sorry.
like if you're sitting, no, you're fine. You're totally fine.
I hit the button too
If
soon.
no, you were right. You were right. If you're sitting in that lounge area and looking back to the front seat before where I removed that partition, you'll see the
Mhm.
curtains that I'm sitting in front of right now. That's the front of the van. You'll see how the bathroom sticks out just a little bit more because I'm a plus size person. So I need a plus size bathroom. Okay. and, and then you can see a little bit of the roof there and a little bit of my little kind of wine barrel ceiling. So I prioritize storage. So there are about 14 cabinets in that space, a full bathroom, and then lots of storage for anything that you could possibly think of.
And I that's one of the things in designing your space. You design it for you.
I did. This is the inside of that bathroom that you saw sticking out. I have storage on the interior of the door. One of the main reasons why I have doors on everything is because you need to contain everything when your house is rolling down the road,
Mhm.
having an
Mhm.
earthquake, everything has to be locked and latched. And then also it has doors so I can display art on the exterior and have additional storage on the interior. So you'll see a full shower. There's a composting toilet there at the bottom. And then there's a wooden floor that isn't pictured here. But it is my toiletry storage, my shower, and a composting toilet, so I require no water um, except for the shower.
I love that.
And be easy on me, everyone. That was my first time tiling, so the tiles are a little rough, but but we'll make it work. There's a little
That's
shower niche
gorgeous.
there, and you can see the handles to the shower, and everything in here is my first time, so it's all a little bit crooked, but it's there. So don't worry, you guys. You can do it.
Absolutely. There,
You can
the
do
I
it.
always talk about. So there's a part of my ladder I installed that's very crooked. My closet door, the board that is the door is warped, and obviously I could have
Oh,
gone
so
to
hard.
get another another piece of wood to make my door,
Ooh,
but it reminds me of
to use what you have.
resilience. It
Yeah.
reminds me of my build, and
Mm-hmm.
the reasoning behind why that board was in my truck for so long is because we were behind. It reminds me of
Mm-hmm.
all of that and how far I've come. So there are some things that just
Absolutely.
kind of remind you of where you've been and how you've overcome and that kind of stuff, and what you're capable of. And I think that's important.
Absolutely. And I've learned how to do a lot of these things better than the first time I did it, but this is the first roll. So if I take it out and do it again, maybe it'll be straighter this time. This is my refrigerator. This is important because it is a 110-volt standard dorm fridge. A lot of van dwellers, at least the fancier ones, have these high-end 12-volt refrigerators because they're a better use of energy. But if they'd done just a little bit more research, they could
Uh-oh.
find one that would also be a good use of energy that costs a tenth of what they spend.
Okay. So
And there's
she
my little vinyl floor, my design floor there, just to have something that was water resistant and
got
fancy. I like the
got it.
pattern.
It's cute.
This is the roof. So remember when I didn't have windows anywhere in the van?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Now
I
you
cut a
do.
3 foot by 2 foot skylight into the ceiling instead so that I could have privacy being surrounded without windows and have a lot of wall space to do storage but still get all of the light. The handle that you see sticking out, I can actually lift that skylight open and climb out onto the roof. So it is a point of
Oh,
egress
how
as well.
cool is that?
When my bed and table is folded down, I climb out onto the roof and I can clean my solar panels or I can just hang out on the roof if I need to. But even though I don't have windows and I have 5 doors, if something happens and I need to get out quickly, I can.
Yep, that's very smart.
And then this is the floor underneath that platform. That handle you see sticking out is actually a drawer. That
Hmm.
drawer goes all the way back, full 4 feet, and it has 30 pairs of shoes in it. So I have a closet that's full of 150 hanging garments and the shoes to go with it. And then on the left, you'll see my stove, and it actually has a towel that I have on there that drew me because it was 2 hands with eyes, and it says "Make your own magic."
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to remind me of my build there. And you can see that that table desk that I have is floating on a single leg that allows it to move around really easily.
Okay.
And then these are the walls that turn into a bed. So my bed stays fully made at all times. And so other van dwellers will move all of their couch cushions around and make the bed and unmake the bed. And I don't have time for all that. So I keep my couch in place. I move my table to the floor and I pull both sides of my bed down. And I have a 6 inch memory foam bed, queen size, fully made at all times.
Excellent. I love that idea.
And that's the other side of the bed. So it's proof that it's queen size and that there are 2 sides to it and they meet in the middle. And it's a very comfy bed.
I think that was it.
That was it. If you
That was
want a
it.
detailed tour, you can go to my website or to my link in bio on Instagram, and you'll see a full tour done by Tiny House Expedition. And I'll go through every detail, and you can see all the storage and the little details that are in there, including what is hidden in my desk.
Okay. Uh, uh, hide and seek.
Oh, yeah. It's something that I know you've never seen in a van.
I'm gonna have to check it out. And so, to our guests, feel free to share some love and appreciation with Claudia via super chats,
Yay.
or if you
Thank
prefer
you for
to
being here.
avoid YouTube's 30% cut, you are welcome to cash at me, and I will make sure Claudia gets it. So please don't forget your super chats and all that good stuff, and share some love for her sharing her story and her journey with us.
Appreciate
Um,
it.
what's one thank you for I apologize that I missed that folder of
Oh, no, it's
photos.
okay.
But I'm happy that I was able to pull that up on the fly.
I'm
I'm
very
gonna have to
impressed with you.
I'm gonna have to sit with the technology because this has been a challenge. So that clearly shows that I am improving.
I
Um,
think so. I was very impressed how you pulled
thank
that up.
you.
Everybody, give Jewel props. Give Jewel props for her ability to troubleshoot and be head of the IT department
Absolutely.
while
I didn't even
live
bust
on
out.
YouTube.
I didn't even bust out in a sweat. Like my vein is here. That was a little bit of a
Wow, it
stress,
was
but I didn't even bust
good.
out into a sweat. So
My
thank you
next
for
event, I know who I'm calling. You're going to be handling tech.
thank you for the follow-up pictures because it's gorgeous. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing your home with us. Thank you so much. What's one question that I didn't ask Claudia that you wish I had asked that is part of your story or your journey that you want to share?
Hmm. I think you asked everything, quite honestly. You're very good. Your investigative journalism. I think you asked everything. You asked me why, you asked me how long, you asked me what it looks like, you asked me things that jumped out or what surprises me about myself. We talked about how I really and truly believe that everyone should take a moment to hit the road and just see what they see. Um, don't let your blackness be a barrier.
Absolutely
We
not.
have so many other
Never.
barriers to entry. Don't let your income be a barrier. Don't let your ability level be a barrier. You will be amazed by all the different kinds of people who live either part time or full time in a vehicle. And if you're trying to go tiny, just generally, um, don't be so particular about how. Just jump in,
Get it?
and then you can
Mhm.
change your mind later. You can change your
Mhm.
mind later. Most tiny dwellers have various versions of their tiny dwelling that they have over time, and then you'll see what's for you and what's for not. But I think you've asked me everything.
I that point for sure. I call it the tiny house remix, and I that
Yeah.
was a statement I made on Instagram the other day, that the fact that it's a smaller space allows you to reimagine it, to rethink it,
Hmm.
much easier than conventional spaces, because the cost is different in a smaller space, and so it allows you to pivot and kind of do it quickly, and it's something that I see as a big benefit for the
Yeah.
smaller spaces, and people should take that into consideration.
Especially because you're building a space that's just for you. You're not
Hmm.
building it to entertain others. You're not building it to house other family members that visit occasionally. You're building a space that is specifically for you, and you can design it down to the detail. And so, because you get to do that, you get to change your mind frequently and make a change accordingly. It's just a lot easier to do that. You might have to do more of it yourself. So, it might not be physically easier, but in thought versus action and cost, it's just easier to do it when you're making it just for you.
And I think that's a really key point, and you've said it like two or three times, because you're building it for you, and that's why it serves you so much better. That's why it the healing, the all of that, because it is all for you, and you're thinking about yourself as you're building this space. It is one of the reasons that I share that I know that I have been successful. This year for me is 7 years living in my house. It is one of the reasons that I know I have been so successful in this. Thank you, Teresa, in this movement,
Thank you,
in
Teresa.
and still in loving my home, because I designed it for me, and there was no other noise. I maybe the heights in my house, I thought of guests coming in, because I could have made it both. I'm not that tall. I could
Well,
have made it, standing, but the bulk of my house is for me, and that is
mhm,
such an important thing in designing the space,
for sure.
and designing a life that you
You're,
love.
there you go.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
the workshops that I was teaching at the Tiny House Festival was design and organize your way to happiness. And when I do lifestyle design for my clients, the idea is to customize your space for the life you want to have. Not just the life that you're already leading. And so it's for you. Be intentional. Someone taller than me, I'm not very tall either. I'm only 5'5", but someone six
Me
foot two can
too.
stand Someone 6'2" can stand in my van. I wanted to have some headroom so it really felt spacious, at least in
Mhm.
height for me.
Mhm.
So there's standing available in my van here, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that was probably the only thought as far as other people that I had when I was building the van. The exterior of my van is nondescript, but the interior of my van is a representation of my inner world. And the color
Absolutely.
and the ideas and the things that are there, so that it's like what's happening in your brain is you're surrounded by, and I love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yes, I will share all of Claudia's information for contacting her for her consultations. So you can get information. I see the comment where all of her contact information will be in the description, so you can reach out to Claudia and speak to her further about her offerings. Um, Again, you have time to send her some super chats. It's been an amazing conversation. I always say
Yeah.
that the Sunday conversations are, as I was trying to think of putting this series together, and I said I don't want to talk about pillows and those types of things. I want to talk about less about the aesthetics and more about the journey and the person and the all the background stuff. And I feel like this um is absolutely a Sunday soul conversation, and each conversation I get back to, yeah, this was a soul conversation. So I definitely appreciate you participating this morning and being the
Yeah.
guest this morning.
Thank you for
And
having me.
absolutely. And I am eventually, very soon, I'm not going to jinx myself, but very soon I intend to be working on my travel trailer and meeting you out
I've
on the road.
I've seen that trailer. I'm
It's
excited about that one.
it is I'm knocking down the rest of the to-dos with this relocation, and so that's I'm coming for it so that I can join you out on the road, and then
And
uh,
I'll teach you how to do things outside of a campground.
absolutely. And then when you're on this side of town, you come visit, and we
Yeah.
can and I can hire you for my closet because it could use some help. So thank you, Claudia.
Thank you, Jewel.
Have a beautiful day. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. I appreciate your time, and I am going to let me do my closing slide. I hope everyone has a great day. And again, this has been Conversations on Intimate Spaces. My guest today, Claudia, shared her van dwelling story and the beauty behind that. This is one of two segments in the series, alternate. So next Sunday will be What's Your Question, where I answer some of the frequently asked questions and share tips to help someone in or on their tiny house journey. So if you have questions, and I do see some questions in the chat that are outside of this conversation, but if you have tiny house questions, please join on those Sundays to ask those questions. Those are where those questions can be answered. And if this video was helpful to you, I ask that you please share it, like it, and tell your friends about it. And also be sure to subscribe to the channel. All of the content for connecting with Claudia, as well as myself, will be available to you in the description of the video. So thank you again very much. Have a great day.
You too.